Hey, welcome to Service Accommodation Crash Course Part 3. Now, I've done 2 parts already in the channel. Part 1, I spoke a lot about, the brand, the legal, actually understanding how to qualify a property and also a location. In Part 2, if you go and watch it again, honestly, there's so much content that one thing I've realized before we ended that Part 2 video, I wanted to talk about a property checklist, because I guess when you've spoken to a landlord and a letting agent and hopefully be able to secure something, I wanted to talk about a property kind of checklist, because as you're walking into property, a lot of time, because it's your first time doing it, you might not have the idea behind certain things that you want to look into. The reality is you've got a property, you might be able to go and put an offer, you do everything, but then you realize that later date, oh my God, I completely forgot to ask them about, X thing. And at that time, the agent might turn around or the landlord might turn around and say, hey, actually, it might not be possible to do so. So it's worth understanding how to view a property, because that's going to be a big win, and the exact process. So let's talk about it now in a thorough manner. So if I've secured a viewing, firstly, I'm going to text or message that agent on the day, and just purely because sometimes what happens is somebody takes a call and the other agent actually comes and views it, and they normally don't communicate between if it's a company let or is it a tenant. So you then generally walk in there going, okay, they know that you're a company let, but you're also in the back of the mind going, oh my God, like they might not do it. And it's happened to many people I've spoken to. So for me, as you walk in, literally putting the guest hat on, right? So as soon as I arrive there, how quickly can I find the property? How quickly can I find the parking? Because that's quite important. And if your guest can't find the parking, then there's going to be a problem, because that basically means that you're going to get a phone call saying, hey, we've arrived to the location, cannot find a parking. So you need to understand what's the easiest way to get to the parking for your potential guest. As you're walking through the parking, you've also got to look at numbers of things. Firstly, if it's a block of apartment, just look around just to make sure that things are looking well. A lot of guests will compare that as they arrive. As you're walking in, if you're working on a block, you might already see basically a key box outside, which is a great news, because you're obviously, for you're probably thinking, actually, now we know that there's already running a service accommodation business. That also means potentially lease will allow you to do, company let service accommodation, which is a great news, but also, just a good understanding of how would that customer go in through that first gate, which could be potentially a fob, or is it a number that they need to put in to go into the apartment block? If it's a house, you can literally know that you can put a key box outside or in the safest place possible, because you've got to think about these things, right? Because in a house, you've got certain places you can leave a key box, and you can put a second key box in a certain place as a backup keys. Whereas with the apartment, you're thinking, well, how does my guest go through the first door? If they can't go through the first door without a key, does that mean can you put a key box outside the property, or is the key box not allowed at all, which means you've got to use a third-party company where the guest can go and pick up the keys? Obviously, for safety reason, it's worth checking all of this. Now, as you're going in and then you've gone into the apartment, outside the apartment door, is there a way to put the key box, or would you put a digital key handle just to make your life easier? But it's something that obviously you can see as you're going into the property, you're taking time to think about your guest and the guest experience you're going to have, because one of the things I can realize is a lot of people don't talk about key box initially, right? And when the deal actually goes through and you realize, oh my God, I need to put a key box and you need to drill a hole, then the issue is you've got to ask the landlord or the letting agent. So at that point, you're thinking, oh my God, you're missing the opportunity straight away, because if they say no, that's an additional £20 added to your monthly bill with the key services. Or you have a problem now, because a guest, effectively, if they want to be able to get the keys on the door, they don't want to go an extra 10 minutes away to find the keys and then come back and get into the property. It's just, again, thinking about the guest experience as you're viewing this property. As you walk into the house, obviously, it's just the usual upbringing of the property, making sure that things are well, and the size of the bedroom. For me, that's crucial, because as you're looking at what I said earlier, right, in our part 1, when we're doing the how to qualify a property, you saw that listing clearly had such a big room that he or she managed to put 2 double beds beds in the actual bedroom, which automatically increase the amount of sleeps, obviously increase the amount of nightly rate they can charge. But it's a great incentive for you to start thinking, this is how I'm going to set up the property. This is exactly how I'm going to, set the processes. This is where the sofa's going to go. So you've got to start thinking about everything while you're chatting with the agent. Obviously, building that relationship is so crucial. So some of the things I always, obviously me being a estate agent owner, I remember chatting with different people, and it's always nice when somebody asks, going, oh, how long have you been doing this for? Like, what's your ideal day look like? And what's your works? It's just a good conversation flow with an agent. You need to build reputation. You need to build that trust. Also, you want to build that friend, because as you're now building that friend in a viewing, when you go back and put the offer, you're going to be able to really leverage saying, hey, I spoke to James on that viewing. James was lovely. James, look, I'm looking to do it. So it really, again, sometimes somebody views the property, but then the other person deals with the offer and speaking to the landlord. So it's worth, again, speaking, like really building relationship with the person that views that property. As you're walking in, obviously, you've got to think about where everything's going to go. If there's any wear and tear, you've got to speak to the person then. You obviously, if you feel like you want to put some feature wall or you want to do some painting, got to mention that to the agent and say, hey, I will happily invest this much money. I want to bring the standard of the property in this way because our guest will want to enjoy this. And especially because you've got that property for 3 years or 5 years, you want to leverage the time initially to be able to get that property into the best standard. So I hope this makes sense. This is just a thought process of what you're going to do, but I'd love you to sit down and just write down the things that you must do on your viewings, because it will give you a good vision on what a viewing should look like and what's the best outcome from that viewing. So the next stage of the process is you thinking about, you've done the viewing, you've got to put an offer. If you like that property, you've got to be very quick. I would even have a template ready to go so that as soon as you get into the car, you know that you're putting an offer and you know that you're serious about it as well, right? So is it better, I get asked a lot, going, is it better giving an offer on a call or an email? Now for me, I personally love actually giving an offer on an email, or generally everything I work on, I prefer to do it on an email, just because if I give it a thorough offer, I know that there's two things I can achieve from here. One, the offer really has to talk about what you're offering, how long you're offering, certainly checking the lease, the landlord checking their mortgages, little things. When you speak to someone on a call, they will say, hey, yes, we'll accept the offer, and you're talking them through all the other things that you need, and they might not be able to achieve that for you on that call. When you send an offer, I always say to them, hey, would you mind putting this offer that I've sent you on an email to the landlord? What their job is, they should literally copy and paste that or forward that to the landlord, because on that email, it clearly asks about the legal matters. That's what I'm excited about. The offer doesn't matter if you're offering them the full asking price or you've reduced it by a certain amount, offering them an extra whatever. There's always different deals that you're going to go through, but for me, the legal part is the most important thing. And I hope you can see how I'm trying to think future rather than now, because two things I can say to you, right? Firstly, I've heard enough bad stories of people not checking their lease. As a result, as soon as they get in there as a service accommodation, spend time setting up, they get an email and a letter from the management company saying you are not allowed to do Airbnb there. All the effort, the time, who to blame to? The agent's going to say, well, you never said that to us. Well, at that point, do you have an email to back it up to say, we're running a company-let service accommodation, we need you to check the lease, which will allow to do short-term let? Have you checked your mortgages so that if anything goes wrong, is the landlord changing or adapting or getting a consent from mortgage to do that? So you can see, again, there's a lot more deeper information that you can go through an email offer. And for me, I would love you to do this. I'm going to give you a free template. I'm going to leave the link down below for the free template. All you need to do is go there, obviously get your information, give us, I think, your name, your email, and you will be able to download that free exact template. So now what's going to happen is you come to a position where I'm going to make it feel like it's been too easy, because you're thinking, okay, well, we've viewed the property, we've qualified location, but look, I'm going to talk about challenges, because what's going to happen within this process is there's two challenges I want to talk about. The call ratio, right? So if you're making only 1 to 10 calls and you're hoping that you're going to secure a service accommodation, the likely chances are you won't be able to, right? A, because of the experience, B, of the knowledge and the reputation that you've got to build. It's obviously going to be a lot easier for you in coming days when you have your first property and you work with an agent who can give you a reference. But for now, you're making that first move. I would love you to make at least 100 phone calls. I spoke to one of our clients recently and she said she made 300 phone calls before she secured her first unit. And to me, that sounds like normal at the moment, especially how the market's going, especially the amount of sources, the people who's trying to get to rent in the UK. Oh my God, it's literally what I think is pretty much true. 300 calls before she secured her first unit. And that shouldn't put you off. That should literally tell you it's only going to make you feel better. It's only going to make you understand how letting agents work and landlords work. And I would love you to request something. Most of the people I work with who have given up making those phone calls because A, they don't have time, B, they don't have the confidence, end up paying sources, property sources, who find the exact same deal as you will for an extra £3,000. The problem here is they're not going to go through the due diligence that I'm telling you to go through. Unless you're such a busy person, you know that deal stack up because you've gone through that right guest behavior checks. It needs, do not pay for the deal, right? If it's your first deal, take your time, because honestly, if you go through that first deal and do it yourself, you will be able to get more deals on your hands with no problems, and you'll build a reputation around letting agents and landlords, because you can say to them, hey, I've worked with this company in that location. And again, remember back to what I said earlier about building relationship with the letting agent when you did the viewing. You can say, hey, you know what, I did a viewing with James, and today, 3 months later, we've got a great relationship. And then you can speak to James saying, James, I'm looking to take another unit. Would you mind giving me a reference, because I've been paying rent and time, I've been a good tenant. And that way you're now leveraging someone else to do it, right? But I guess the challenges here is the 1 to 100 ratio, making those phone calls. And the second challenge is what I'm going to now go through, the referencing and the agreement. So let's go through those two parts to further out your deal, the further out to secure this first property of your service accommodation business. Now, the referencing for me, depending on if you're working with a landlord or a letting agent, if you're working with a landlord, they're probably going to use the open rent method to do referencing. Obviously, it really is different to different landlords. Some are a lot more relaxed, but some will be able to go through certain things. They'll want to use usual stuff like the agent would. But for me, I think, again, because I'm pushing the agent route, I'm going to talk about the referencing with agents, because obviously being an estate agent in the past few years, I've owned, and I really understood the process behind why it's so important, and especially what are the referencing method that you're going to go through as a company let, because the company you own is brand new, has got no accounts, has got no history. The agent's going to ask you that, and the reality is you should be able to confidently back it up. So first thing, when you do a referencing on a company that hasn't got any history, you've got to be a guarantor. Now, a guarantor should have a certain amount of salary. Obviously, it all depends on the rental value that you're going to go through. So it might need one guarantor, or you might need two guarantor. It could be you or your partner, you or your brother, but you've got to have a combined salary to prove and pass the referencing. So the company is the tenant, you become the guarantor, and the referencing should go through as normal. Option number one. Option number two, some agents will take savings, which has been in your account for 6 months, as a part of referencing, which is a great news, because if you don't have enough income, that is also a great way to showcase that you've got something to back it up and pay the rent and all that kind of stuff. The third thing is some people will class you as a homeowner who has got a great credit history and be able to back that up as, again, a guarantor, which is, again, a great potential option. But you can see there's a variety of different things. Now, you should be able to say to them, hey, can I ask you about your referencing? I've got 3 different options. I can qualify as a guarantor for my company. I've got two guarantors ready to go. Is that okay with you? You're asking that question rather than them telling you, right? Or you're saying to them, hey, look, I'm a homeowner with an X amount of salary. Would you consider that as a part of the journey? It's just understanding what and how it works so that you really understand the referencing, because if you don't, then when we move into the legal or the agreement part of it, there's going to be more challenges, which is, firstly, let's talk about the agreement that you're going to use. So because it's not a normal let, remember it's a company let, right? You've got to have a company let agreement if you're working with a letting agent. If you're working with a landlord, you can do management agreement. Now, sadly, our industry is all about templates. People share templates and people use templates. The agreement with the letting agent, the company let agreement, it's pretty strict. Most of the agent will say you cannot change our company let agreement terms. Now, there will be terms, and I've worked with a guy called Martin very closely. He's a property lawyer. He understands, his wife runs a service accommodation business, and I know for the fact, right, numbers of time I've spoken to Martin with regards to this. He's like, Piers, a company let agreement from an agent is not right. It's for a company let is for someone who owns a company and wants their staff or somebody in the company to stay there as a normal let. We're using a company let method to do a service accommodation and a short-term rental, so completely different. So for us, there's there's legal terms that we cannot have in the agreement, which means it needs to be altered. So there's two options. You've got to say them. Now, you know where I said about the offer email? In the offer email, I mentioned saying, hey, there are some terms that we need to agree to in the agreement. Would you mind sending us your company let agreement, or would you be happy for us to use a solicitor to review it? Now, you're making a statement piece straight away. Guys, there's people out there who will tell you to do it and it will be fine. If you're going to be in this business in coming years, you really want to leverage a business in the right way possible, you've got to do it in the best way to protect yourself as well as your business. Because tomorrow, if something goes wrong in the property and they bring a contract, you can then say to them, hey, in the contract, we've reviewed all the clause and said it's going to be used for that purposes, right? If you don't do that, when something comes up and they bring the contract in front of you, you have nothing to say, which means you'll be liable to rent, you'll be liable to, not giving back deposit, and there'll be so many other problems that you're going to find. If you've got that protection now, then in future, when things do go wrong, you'll have an option to go back and say, hey, do you remember that email I sent you on that day? I've got everything written there. So effectively, whatever you've done is wrong, not us, right? Again, the company let agreement needs to be reviewed. Again, the setting clause, and then management agreement. People use templates. I am, again, all about starting business, taking action, but the management agreement template isn't really legally viable. But if you can convince a landlord to do so, absolutely do it. Martin, who again I've worked with closely as a property lawyer, he will say, Piers, that should be a no-go for anyone who's starting, because again, if anything goes wrong, that is the paperwork that you want to go back to. So guys, I hope that makes sense behind the processes of legal, the referencing. The crash course for me was all about giving you guys the value. It is truly to say, look, there is a simple way to get this business started, but also those minor detail that's going to make or break your business in 6 to 12 months when there might be a problem is so important. So I hope you're enjoying this video so far. Now, I am going to end this part 3 crash course, but I have got 3 more things that I'm going to talk to you guys about in the next video, which is the setup of the property, the cost of the setup, and actually launching that property itself, which means in the part 4, you'll have a full business up and running. So guys, I hope you enjoyed another free crash course, really putting details on the processes and what you can do. Obviously, this can be dived into a lot more detail, but this will give you an understanding of what the business is all about, what service accommodation business is all about. And for me, I've been doing this for 6 years, working and consulting clients all over the world. And for me, this is my everyday things. Whatever I'm sharing you is the exact process that you've got to take to secure and run your first unit. So guys, thank you so much for watching another GrowYourBnb video, and I'll be back with another video soon.